You know, I see a lot of things come through the doors of my pawn shop. Old toys, guitars, weird historical artifacts. But coins? They're special. Coins are like tiny metal history books. You can hold a piece of the past right in your hand. And when we talk about Swedish coins, we're talking about over 1,000 years of history. That's a lot of stories. Every king, every war, every big change, it often ends up stamped right onto their money. It tells you what they valued, who was in charge, and what was happening at the time. It's more than just money. It's a direct link to the people who used it centuries ago. Think about it. A farmer in the Viking Age might have used a coin to buy seeds. A soldier in the 17th century might have been paid in heavy copper plates. A family in the 1900s would have used the Krona to buy their first radio. These coins passed through thousands of hands, each with its own story. They saw the rise and fall of kings, the shift from silver to copper and back again. It all begins around the year 995 AD. This is the Viking Age. Before this, people in Sweden were mostly using foreign coins, English pennies, Arabic dirhams. They got these through trade and through raiding. They also used a weight-based system with pieces of silver called Hacksilver. But then a king named Olof Skotkonung came along. He is considered the first Christian king of Sweden. He wanted to do what other European rulers were doing. He wanted to make his own money. It was a sign of power. It showed you were a real king with a real kingdom. So he set up a mint in the town of Sigtuna. These first Swedish coins, called penningar, were pretty simple. They were thin, they were small, they were made of silver. They were directly copied from the English pennies of King Ethelred the Unready. In the business, we call these imitations. Olaf even hired English moneyers to come to Sweden and help him get started. The designs on these early coins often had a cross on one side, a symbol of his new Christian faith. After that first attempt at coinage, things went quiet for about 150 years. Then, around the 1150s, coin production started up again. This time it was more widespread. Mints popped up in places like Lodos, later in Visby on the island of Gotland. The coins from this period were called bracteates. These are very interesting coins. They were so thin that they could only be stamped on one side. The design on the front would appear in reverse on the back. This method saved silver, which was always in short supply. It was a practical solution for a kingdom that wasn't exactly rich. The designs on these medieval bracteates were often simple, showing things like a crowned head, a letter, a star. The problem was there was no central control. Local rulers, bishops, powerful lords, all started making their own coins. This created a lot of confusion. You could have dozens of different types of coins circulating in the same region, and they didn't all have the same value. It was a chaotic system. To fix this, King Magnus Eriksson introduced a major reform around 1370. Everything changed in the 16th century with a guy named Gustav Vasa. He's a huge figure in Swedish history. He led the rebellion that broke Sweden away from the Kalmar Union in 1523 and became king. He was a master of propaganda and finance, and he knew that controlling the money was key to building a strong, independent nation. One of the first things he did was to launch a massive currency reform. He needed money to pay for his army and run his new government. So he started minting new large silver coins called dalers based on the German thaler, the big international coin of the time. The dollar was a big, heavy silver coin. It became the standard for Swedish currency for the next 200 years. Gustav Vasa's dalers from 1534 are famous. They feature a realistic, powerful-looking portrait of him on one side. This was new. Medieval coins had generic king portraits, but this was clearly him. It was a statement of his personal power. On the other side was the Swedish coat of arms. He also minted smaller coins, like the mark and the ore. The mark coin was particularly interesting. It was a square coin, or clipping, minted in 1521 during the War of Liberation, made from necessity when round coins were too hard to produce quickly. His sons continued his work. In the 17th century, Sweden became a major European power. This was its age of greatness, or as they called it, Stormaktstiden. They had a huge army fighting in the 30 Years' War, and armies are expensive. But Sweden had a secret weapon. It had the Falun mine, one of the largest copper deposits in the world. At one point, it produced 2/3 of all European copper. The price of copper on international markets was falling. King Gustav II, Adolf, and his advisors had a clever, maybe crazy, idea. What if they made copper the basis of their currency? Silver was the standard everywhere else. Sweden had tons of copper and little silver, so they made copper coins with face value equal to silver. Copper was worth much less, so the coins had to be enormous. The first copper coins in the 1620s were copper ore, but that was just the start. The government went all in. They created a full range of copper coins, from the smallest denominations up to a massive 10-daler coin. Daily life was transformed. The problem with the big round copper coins was that they were still not practical enough. They were hard to transport and store. So, in 1644, under Queen Christina, Sweden came up with an even crazier idea: plate money, or platmynt. These weren't coins in the traditional sense. They were huge rectangular slabs of copper. Think of them as giant metal IOUs. Each plate was stamped in the corners with the mark of the mint monarch's name. In the center, it was stamped with its value in silver dalers. This was Sweden's solution to making their copper reserves function as high-value currency. These things were enormous. The largest denomination was the 10-daler plate, minted in 1644. It weighed an incredible 43 pounds, or about 19.7 kilograms. That's the heaviest coin in the history of the world. Even the smaller denominations were heavy. A half-daler plate weighed about 1.7 pounds, or 0.77 kilograms. Obviously, you didn't carry these around in your pocket. People would use them for major purchases, like buying land, buying a house. For transport, they would use sleds carts. After the chaos of the Great Northern War and the end of Sweden's time as a great power, the country entered a new period in the 18th century known as the Age of Liberty. The power of the king was reduced, and the government, the Riksdag, had more control. They inherited a messy monetary system: plate money, copper coins, silver coins, early banknotes, all circulating at once. The main goal was to bring order to this chaos. They tried to phase out the heavy copper plates and create a more unified currency. They issued a lot of smaller copper coins like the 1 ore. This era also saw the rise of so-called emergency money. During times of war or financial crisis, the government would issue tokens coins made of cheap metals, promising to redeem them for silver later. A famous example is the Gertz daler. These were small copper tokens meant to be worth a full silver daler. People didn't trust them, and the system collapsed, causing financial ruin for many. It taught a hard lesson: money depends on trust. If people don't believe it's worth something, then it isn't. The 19th century was a time of huge change for Sweden. The country lost Finland to Russia in 1809, which was a major blow. But it also entered into a personal union with Norway in 1814, which lasted until 1905. This was also the century of industrialization. Sweden transformed from a poor agricultural society into a modern industrial nation. The money had to keep up. For the first part of the century, the riksdaler system of Gustav III remained in place. The coins featured portraits of the new Bernadotte line of kings, starting with Karl XIV Johann, who was originally one of Napoleon's marshals. A significant reform happened in 1855. The system was decimalized. This is a huge step in making money easier to use. Instead of the old 48 skilling to a riksdaler, the new riksdaler riksmynt was divided into 100 ore. This is the system we know today. 100 smaller units making up one main unit. It simplifies everything. The biggest change of all came in 1873. Sweden decided to join the Scandinavian Monetary Union along with Denmark. To join, Sweden had to abandon its old riksdaler and adopt a new currency, the krona, which means crown. The krona was based on a gold standard, but the krona itself remained